Maribel Munoz. Your title is incredibly long, so I'd actually like for you to give me your title and let the residents know a little bit about some of the things you do here at City Hall, your function, your purview.
I would just say I'm a buyer.
Okay. What does that mean exactly? What do you buy? What are we purchasing?
It's not that I'm going out and buying something, I'm just reviewing what the departments need and making sure that we're getting the best value
Okay.
for what
So
we
you're
pay.
one of those in fiscal services that are good stewards of our
Yes.
tax dollars. That's
Yes.
great. Okay. So when a department has to make a purchase, then you're pretty much looking at that to make sure it's competitive, just in terms of its pricing.
Correct. So if there's a project, we make sure that if it has to go out to bid, that the bids that we're getting are complete with what the department needs. And we pretty much get all the paperwork, make sure the insurance is in place. If they need bonds, that we get those payment bonds. If there's anything that the vendor doesn't have on file, we provide that so that once the bid closes, everything is ready to go.
So communication's really key, I think, in your
Yes.
area, especially with the departments. And now, I always ask this question of everyone, but what kind of led you in life's journey, and how long have you been working for the city of Banning, first off?
It will be 14 years.
Wow, okay, that's wonderful.
This year, yeah.
That's fantastic. And not in the same position? You've had
No.
various positions through the
I
years?
have moved around in the fiscal department.
Okay,
I started off in utility billing.
okay,
I was a customer service up in the front counter,
okay.
and I did that for about 6.5 years.
Wow.
And then,
So you really get to know residents, I'm sure. You
Yes.
really get to know people. Yeah, up there,
definitely,
Yeah,
yeah, especially because I was the first bilingual
that's fantastic.
customer service representative, so I had a little bit of a following.
Okay,
And then from there, I went to accounts payable, and I did that for about another 6 years.
wow, that's fantastic. So in terms of life's journey, how did you end up here with the city of Banning, or just in your current position?
I ended up here because my previous employer was moving
Okay,
from Riverside County to LA County. And even though it was a really good job, I was not looking forward to the drive.
to the drive, yeah.
My kids were in school, and I was in charge of taking them to school, so I
Sure,
could
you were
not-
mom, you had mom's
I-
responsibilities, yeah.
Yeah, so I honestly just looked around for whoever was hiring at the time when there were not very many options.
Okay,
And ironically enough, I got as far as the second interview, and then I didn't get the job.
okay.
And then a few months later, they called me asking me if I was still interested because another position had opened up.
Wow. So we're celebrating Women's Appreciation Month, and I think it's extremely vital, and it's pivotal in so many ways, because the contributions of moms and the strong women in the family unit and so forth, and in the work environment, it's so critical to the operation. How is it in terms of a challenge for you as a mom, and then going into the workforce in a full-time capacity, I assume? Did you find that being a woman, that was a challenging aspect in terms of what you were doing in that regard?
I did not think that it was a challenge.
Okay.
I think that's what being a mom is.
Uh-huh.
You just take care of your children, whether it's when they're sick, when you have to feed them, or when you have to take care of them financially. I am lucky I'm not a single mom,
Okay.
but I do know that a lot of single moms are out there and they go to work, and it's not something that we have the luxury or the time to stop and think about. We
Right,
just,
you just have to do it.
we just have to do it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not, I mean, I think back now, and I'm thinking, like,
How did I do it?
I
Right.
don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
that I would be able to do it again if I had to start the process at this specific point in my life.
Yeah.
But it was just something that I did.
Do you think things have changed for women in the workforce through the years, so from when you started and where women are now entering the workforce?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think there are some new opportunities, but I still feel women have to fight just as hard, if not harder, than their counterparts. And I do feel there are some jobs where society as a whole has the mentality where that's a man's job.
Do you think things are changing subtly, though? Do you feel like
Yes.
there's a little bit more of an empowerment in allowing women different opportunities that
Yes.
they didn't otherwise have, maybe in a younger generation.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
What would you say in terms of advice for younger people kind of entering the workforce? And it could be, just anyone, not necessarily women, but just young people that are looking at an entry-level position. What's some advice that you would give them looking back on your life and saying, I wish I could tell this story or be able to convey this bit of advice for them?
Honestly, the only advice that I would have, and it's the same advice I give my children, is don't be afraid to ask questions. I think a lot of times we stop ourselves because we're afraid of how we might be interpreted if we ask a question, even though maybe it needs to be asked. We just kind of like stop ourselves from asking that question. But I also think that anybody who goes into any workforce or any position, look at what that position really entails and make sure that you're willing to do the work.
Right. Yeah, because I think it's a full understanding in terms of the capacity of what the job description is, but oftentimes, you and I both know that what's printed in the job description, there's so many other responsibilities
Yes.
that go with that position.
Yes.
Did you find, now obviously being bilingual was a huge asset for the city and really kind of put your foot forward just in terms of the ability to exercise that skill set? Because really in a lot of ways, I think people oftentimes do have a fear factor for learning other languages. Was Spanish one of your native languages as you were growing up?
It was.
Okay.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So it gave you that advantage in the workforce, and especially today, it's very much needed. It almost seems like that becomes a prerequisite for some people.
Yes, it was very much needed, especially because in Banning, and not just in Banning, but in a lot of cities, you do have a lot of first generation, whether they're Mexican American or whatever they may be, but you have maybe the children that have to interpret for their parents and they don't
that's
know the
interesting.
correct terminology. So that was very important for me to make sure that I did learn the correct terminology for the job that I was doing.
I think that's wonderful. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges in terms of what you do right now as a profession?
Trying to make people understand that we're not the bad guy. There are policies and procedures that we have to follow and adhere to, and it's not just for our benefit, but it's for the benefit of the city, for the benefit of the citizens of the city. And sometimes I think departments or even vendors feel like, it's one-sided, but it's not.
Okay.
So we have to look at the full picture.
There's a policy, there's a procedure, and you have to make certain that you're adhering to that and that we're adhering to the ordinances, the standards, whatever regulations have been forward in the city. Do you find oftentimes that people have a little bit of a misunderstanding from private sector to public sector and the rules that kind of govern both sides?
Oh, definitely,
Yeah,
yes.
in what way do you think that occurs?
I don't think people really understand that as a government agency, we are a not-for-profit agency. We are, if there's any profit, it's in the way of the results, the benefits for the citizens.
Okay.
Not monetary value.
Got it.
Where private sector, it's all about the stockholders.
Sure. It's a profit margin you have to adhere to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest misconception is like, yes, we do have a huge project, but we have to do it as, responsibly as we can to make sure that it does get completed in the timely manner, but also using the funds appropriately.
Right. Of all the different positions that you've held with the city and where you are now, of course, were there any particular facets of each of the positions that you've held in the past that have allowed you to have a different perspective of where you are now?
Yes, I think working in different divisions of the Administrative Services Department has helped me find different pieces of the puzzle.
Okay.
And it's not until you move out of your comfort zone that you realize, oh, this is why we have to do things this way, or this is why we're asked to, this is why we have this policy for this purpose. So that was one of the reasons that I went from accounts payable into purchasing.
Okay.
Because I I saw the link, and I thought, well, maybe if we can do things this way, it might make things easier.
Easier, sure. Well, we greatly appreciate you taking time to be with us today, and I can't thank you enough for your contributions to the city, the work that you do. The department's fantastic, and it's a challenge, most assuredly, not only from a perception standpoint, but you are, again, stewards of our public tax dollars, and we appreciate the great job that you're all doing over there. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.